This is Porn Talk.
Welcome back to Porn Talk. We are with Wally Bressler, author of Tragic Hero, Part 2.
I think part of what challenges me too is going out to dinner and seeing a family and the parents are all looking at their phones and the kids are, the kids are looking at, what do you call it? Something online, whatever, social media, and nobody's talking to each other, and
it makes me so sad. It really does.
How are you going to teach these kids to have relationships with people and have conversations with people?
It's sad. Yeah.
I was at a restaurant the other day and I saw an elderly couple and they had gotten up together to go get something. They came back and I looked at the table and they both had their big old oversized iPads with the tent to hold it up. And they sat there and watched TV across from each other while they had dinner. I mean, what I'm saying? It's terrible. I'm saying? And I mean, look, people can do whatever they want. It's not for me to judge.
Yeah.
And I kind of just did, and I'm sorry, but I just think it's how do you get people to connect with each other and to work with each other and build relationships with each other? And how do you get to strengthen those skill sets that are going to help you fight off challenges and pain in life if you're sitting there watching TV and not dealing with your problems that might need to be dealt with, or even fun things?
Yeah. And, that's a good segue. So what is the positive side here? Like how, in your book and that, how did you finally start turning things around? And, I know this is a process. We're all in a process, but how do you start finally turning things around? And you are wildly business successful. Like people don't realize, I looked you up, I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, you ain't playing.
I've been actually, it's interesting because I hit everything really well for a long time. I was very fortunate. I mean, I grew up in Nashville, New Hampshire, and I played high school sports. I did well academically for the most part. I went to one of the top 15 liberal arts colleges in the country. I wouldn't have gotten in if I wasn't like 6'3", 250 pounds coming out of high school, of course. But my grades are good, but they weren't good enough to get into there. But I played all 4 years. I was a letter winner all 4 years. I got a job in corporate America. And by the time I was 28, I was making $100,000 a year. I got married, I had 4 amazing kids. I was on The Biggest Loser in 2006.
Oh,
lost 116 pounds. Yeah. I've had, you can check that out. And then, I sold, it's funny because I suffered from call reluctance for 10 years, but I sold 72 houses in my first 14 months in the real estate business. And,
wow.
a lot of success.
Wait, say that you sold 72 houses in your first
14 months.
Months.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't all me. I got connected with the right guy. I had a great mentor, but no, I'm saying, but I've been very successful, and I've worked with some of the top, real estate agents in the United States and Canada. But that entire time while I was doing all that, I was doing it just to run away from my shame, and my addictions. I was addicted to so many things. I mean, I would eat in my car all the time. You know what I'm saying? I meant to lie to my ex-wife about a cheeseburger because I didn't want to fight with her.
And let me interrupt you there too. So out of your car, we both have extensive sales backgrounds. And I really think that was a big part of why it took me longer to break free of this than normal, because as a salesperson, you spend a lot of time by yourself. I would spend a lot of time in my home office. And I think salespeople in particular may have some larger challenges than a lot of people with addictive type of things. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, you're stuck with only one set of thought patterns when you're by yourself most of the time, and that's you, right? Your own. And usually those are not very conducive to breaking addictions and getting over things, and I saw that when I was looking at some of the stuff, and you talked about empowering salespeople and helping them change their lives. So I was just checking. I was doing some research on your stuff, and I really thought about that. And I'm like, salespeople they're driven people, right? To be a good salesperson, you have to be driven, right? So you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a commission salesperson, it's fraught with potentially a lot of ups and downs. So there's lots of fear, there's lots of pain, there's lots of pressure, and having an addiction, especially porn addiction, because if you're traveling, you can watch it in your, right? You go to a nice hotel, you can rent porn movies. And they don't come up as porn movies, so you're protected there, right? You have internet
Yeah.
now in
Yeah.
your room, so you've got your what do you call it, your laptop, and now you've got it on your phone. And I used to go to strip clubs when I would travel for business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go, and I couldn't put it on the company dime, and I didn't take anybody, but I would go places, and they remember me. You know what I'm saying? But so I used to, and so because you're by yourself, and here's the
Yes.
thing.
You're by yourself.
And usually, if you have an addiction, it's because something pretty crappy happened when you were a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and because you were never told or shown how to take care of something, your level of what's what I'm looking for, your self-control, discipline is not great to begin with. So you're already at a disadvantage because your brain has not been wired, or you've not trained yourself to go ahead and fight. So you're literally the kid in the candy store. You know what I'm saying? You're out and about.
Mm-hmm.
Addictions are, it just pops up. Interesting, by the way. I remember one of the folks I worked with, I asked the question. I said, "How is it that I've eaten?" This is literally a few years ago. How is it when I've eaten an hour later I want something? Why do I want shrimp scampi after I just had a huge meal? And she said something very interesting. She says, since we were a child, we've been avoiding pain, and we basically said to our brain, "Let's do what we have to avoid this pain." Whether it was an avoidance strategy like procrastination, perfectionism, something like that, or if it was whatever, or it was, usually an addiction when you're sick that you can speak of. But we have these addictions, and these addictions get stronger. The more we rely on them, the more we rely on them, the more we rely on them, the stronger they get. And what she said to me is that we train our brains to be such that because our brains are created to protect us and keep us alive, through addiction, we're training our brain to actually get ahead of future fearful situations, to get ahead of future painful situations. So things could be perfectly fine and perfectly normal, and all of a sudden you'll want to eat or you'll want to watch pornography. Yeah. And it won't even be a trigger, but it's just your brain saying, "Hey, you know what? Let's just get ready. Why wait? Why wait until the problem comes? Let's just get ready now," right? And then it's right, and that's what happens. And so it's crazy.
Yeah. Wally, you might appreciate this. So I do intermittent fasting and regular fast. And about a year ago, I actually did an 11-day fast. And people think, "Oh my God, why didn't you die?" Or you can live an extremely long time without food.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and actually I could have went longer, but we had a social thing to go to, so I chose to end the fast. But what I learned in those 11 days with not one morsel of food, it was just a water fast,
Mm-hmm.
is that because what I noticed is that hunger would come in waves. And what I learned is most of the time when I eat, it's not because I'm hungry. And I'd say most of the time. So most of the time when I'm eating, it's not because I'm hungry.
Right.
It's either boredom, fear, whatever. So that's what I learned from my 11-day fast, that most of the time I'm eating is not because I'm hungry.
And to your point, there's also emotional hunger, right? When we have addictions, and this is science, this isn't me. I mean, I just learned this, but when we're addicted to something, we stop growing emotionally. And the reason we stop growing emotionally is because we're not letting our emotions process, right? We're not facing our challenges and facing our fears and dealing with them. We keep numbing them, right? Brene Brown says when you numb one emotion, you numb them all. So we keep numbing our emotions. And so we are teaching ourselves to numb them just on their, or teaching ourselves to put ourselves in situations where something goes for a period of time where we don't have it. We taught our brains to, okay, I'm feeling something. I want whatever it is. So I want it to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a while to really divine between, is this emotional hunger or is this me really being hungry? But if you do the research, emotional hunger and physical hunger are two totally different things, because emotional hunger comes on over time. Physical hunger comes on over time. Emotional hunger just it just comes up. It's your brain going, "Okay, let's eat. Something's going. Like, we got to get ready," And so, and there's other things that are related to it. So, so it is boredom, absolutely boredom. It could be you're tired. It could be that you're fearful and your brain's looking to protect you. And sometimes it's emotional hunger, but it's important that you sit for a second. That's where mindfulness, Same thing. That's where the mindfulness comes in. That's where you're like, okay, let me just check in here. Let me see what this is for a second. This is emotional hunger because I'm really not hungry because it just ate an hour ago. And then, you know, and then you can check yourself. I think this is the best thing about mindfulness is that literally you train your brain to do the work for you.
Yeah.
Right?
And what you're talking about, we could say almost exactly the same thing with porn or sex.
Yep.
You may think,
Period.
oh, I have such a high sex drive. Well, that may be true, but our subconscious mind is our brain, our mind is so powerful. It's like, I'm the traveling salesperson. I'm in a hotel by myself. I'm lonely. Maybe I'm scared about making my numbers this
Mhm.
month. And all of a sudden I find myself really triggered sexually. Now, is it because that, your body is looking to procreate? Or is your subconscious mind going, Eric, you're not feeling really good right now. You could feel really good right now. Just get out the porn. Or
I know
you know
some-
what? When you're at a hotel, you're surrounded by all these different restaurants. Why not go binge eat? So
Mhm.
is it are you really physically hungry? Are you really needing a sexual release? Or is it your subconscious mind wanting you to pacify yourself?
No, I think that's all great questions. 100%.
And again, the salespeople, I really think like, the traveling salesperson is almost a cliche of,
Yeah.
the one night stands and hookups. And
Yep. I agree. It's unfortunate too, but it's not even cliche. It's a fact in many cases.
yeah.
It's just too bad.
So with your book, Tragic Hero, what are some, I don't know, tips, tactics, techniques, or stories, or that you could share with people that are struggling either with sex addiction or food addiction? What are some things that you've learned?
Well, one of the biggest things I've learned is the level of kindness we need to offer ourselves. It needs to be super high. I'm a big fan of Kristen Neff. She's a doctor. She does a whole series on self compassion. She has the three elements of self compassion, and one of the things she says is, you know, self compassion is just the compassion you would offer to somebody else, but you offering it to yourself. So instead of doing our addiction and then beating the crap out of ourselves emotionally, right? You do the addiction and you're like, okay, you know what? You're not a bad person, right? You're not a horrible person. You didn't do what you did to hurt somebody. You were just in pain. Okay. Now you need to go get some help, right? But you need to give yourself the same compassion. Whatever you would say to somebody else, you should say to yourself. I've kind of adopted a strategy. You don't say anything to anybody or yourself that you wouldn't say to your kids, right? You wouldn't tell a kid they were lazy or stupid or fat or dumb or were drunk. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't do that. You shouldn't say it to yourself. So self-compassion is a key ingredient. Self-kindness, self-care is a key ingredient to healing, right?
I
So that's
love
that.
that.
So that's a big one for me. Is that the other thing is I talk about getting radical transparency, radical honesty, and taking radical responsibility. So radical transparency is really looking at things for how they are. Like let's look at this for what it is. Let's take the glasses off, the rose-colored glasses. Let's take off all the sheen. Let's peel back the layers and let's really look at how things. Let's be transparent, and then let's be like radically transparent, then radically honest. What does that mean? It means you look at it for what it is.
Hmm.
Like you call it as you see it. You don't say, "Oh, I'm a little overweight. Oh, I'll start eating tomorrow." But it's what you're overweight. You're in a bad place physically, mentally, emotionally, and you must take care of yourself or you're going to die young. Your dad did. All right. And then you have to take radical responsibility. And that means if you need help, you go get it.
Yeah,
And then you have to do the work. Because even if you get help, Eric, you still need to do the work. Right?
that's right.
Right.
And
And
it's work. There's a lot of work.
who's the first person to climb up Mount Everest? What was his name?
I know. I don't know the guy's name, but I know who you're referring to.
Who was it? Come on, you remember.
I don't.
Anyways, Sir Edmund Hillary, right? So,
Thank you. Yes.
right, everybody remembers him, but nobody remembers his Sherpa's name. It was Tenzing Norgay. I was trying to find the year when it happened. but it was like 1953. So Edmund Hillary went up Mount Everest, first guy to scale the whole thing, but he had a Sherpa, Tenzing Norgay, brought him to the top. It's in 53 with like probably 1/10 of the technology we have today.
Right.
Right. But here's the thing. Even though Tenzing Norgay knew about base camps, even though he knew about time to climb, time not to climb, time of the year to go, when to stop, when to go, keeping warm, eating, all that stuff, Hillary still had to climb behind him. Right. He still had to walk behind him and follow him all the way up there. He still had to do the work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing for the rest of us. Like we have to, even if we have a guide, we still have to do the work. I mean, how many counselors did I go to? How many therapists did I go to? How many coaches have I paid thousands of dollars for? How many Tony Robbins conferences did I go to? Which, by the way, were all awesome and helpful. You know what I'm saying? I went to so many things, but I wasn't ready to do the work.
Right.
So the benefit I did get was short-lived, and then I didn't do the work. And only when I decided that I was going to do the work and take the steps and deal with the pain and work through it and realize that it's a process and not an event, when I finally actually got radically responsible for what I needed to do, did it change? I mean, do I have any regrets? Yeah, I got a lot of regrets, you know what I'm saying? But I can't look back at all the dumb stuff, horrible stuff I did and beat myself up anymore. I just got to, you know what? I got so many years going forward. I just got to do the best that I can,
Yeah.
And so, but I think taking radical responsibility will, and getting radically transparent, radical honest with yourself, radically, responsible for things. Those are three things that everybody needs to do if they're going to really make a true change for themselves.
Radical acceptance. I can't think of his name. I had him on.
Yeah, there was a book that just came out a couple of years ago, didn't it?
Yeah, he was on my podcast, Radical Acceptance. Anyway, yes, I love what you're saying, and right now at this moment, there's somebody that is listening to this live or recorded, and they're really struggling right now. They're struggling with maybe multiple addictions. They're addicted to sex, and they're addicted to porn. They're addicted to food, and they're really struggling right now. Maybe even considering suicide. What do you say to that person?
I wouldn't say anything to them. I would ask them questions.
Okay.
I would really, because folks that I work with folks who have trouble getting on the phone. Have self-sabotage issues, perfectionism. They have issues with approval and acceptance and stuff like that. Some of them have addictions to all kinds of things. But the first time I ask them, I'm like, hey, let's first of all, let's give yourself some kindness. What's one nice thing you could say to yourself right now? Right? What are some nice things you can say about yourself? What are some good things you've done? Because we've all done good things. Tony Robbins calls it stacking. Let's kind of at least get you out of that horrible, horrible place. Let's stack. What's a good thing you've done? What's another good thing you've done? What's another good thing you've done? Okay, let's get to the point where you can hold your head up at least level and say, okay, let's go back. Let's take a look and let's figure out where this came from.
Yeah, but he says, I haven't really done anything good.
Nothing. So you've never done anything good before in your entire life. You've not been nice. You've not been nice to one person your entire life. You've been mean to everybody.
Right. Yeah.
You've not been mean. You've been mean to everybody in your entire life. You never helped one person with anything. Is what I would say. And then I would just say, listen, people like you and I, actually, we're probably some of the nicest people on the face of the planet because we deal with everybody else's problems but ourselves. So I'm guessing you've probably done a lot of good things. The only person you haven't taken care of is yourself. Would that be right? And they go, yes. And I would say, hey, listen, let's go back and look, because I think what I've learned from this is that when you can help people go back and find out what caused it, they can start healing from it, right? I literally have people go back to their childhood if they have to and figure out what it is. Were you beaten up? Were you sexually abused? Were you ignored? It could be something small. I have people who have addictions and things like that who are perfectionists because they got made fun of in class one day, But for the people who are having trouble, it's being willing to look at the actual problem and saying, okay, it's not going to kill me. Okay, I see what it is now. It's a double-edged sword. It's painful, but there's hope there, right? When I go back and I can say, hey, this is why this happened, right? The reason that you're the reason that you're overeating, the reason that you're making this pain go away is because, your mom was an alcoholic and your dad stuck up for her instead of you, and your mom abused you and verbally abused you and treated you like crap. And the one place we go in life is because for acceptance and approval is our parents. And it's very painful when people who are supposed to love you don't love you, and are supposed to care for you don't care for you, and who are supposed to approve of you don't approve of you. So, and then I would say it's perfectly reasonable that you feel the way that you do, right?
I love it.
Does that make sense? And then be like, hey, you know what? And it's not your fault, okay? But it is your responsibility. And I love Will Smith's video, Fault versus Responsibility. He talks about it. I quoted in the book, but like, he says, look, it's not your fault you had an alcoholic parent. It's not your fault that all these horrible things happen to you. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Anybody who has an addiction, yes, they're taking the action to drink, to eat, to have sex, to do whatever. It's like, that's on us. We're taking the action. But the fact of the matter is we're not doing it to be hurtful, mean, bad people. We're doing it because we're in pain. And that's the only way we know to make the pain go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One, I would like to talk about some of your big successes, how you've turned things around, and you kind of remind me a little bit, Grant Cardone.
Oh, Uncle G. Uncle
He,
G. He's a guy. He's a special guy. He's a real one.
Yeah, and why I bring him up is because he had some serious drug addiction problems, and he took that same obsession with drugs and moved it over into sales. And a lot of people say, well, being obsessed, that's a negative thing. He says, no, I just took that same obsession with drugs and put it in sales and became wildly successful. So tell us about some of your successes. And I also know, next week you're going to be on the Thanksgiving Times Square Today show and all this. Tell us, you've turned things around. You're doing some great things. Success Magazine.
Yep. Yeah. I've always wanted to help other people, but in helping all those other people, I really neglected myself. But now that I'm, and I use the analogy, and I think you've probably experienced this too as my guest, because a lot of people who have challenges like we did or do experience this, is that we want to feel good about ourselves. And so we don't want to deal with our own pain. We don't know how to deal with our own pain, but we realize that if we're kind to other people and help other people, we can feel good about ourselves. Does that make sense? And so I spent my life, I wasn't a very good person my entire life, but I spent a lot of times in my life doing nice things for the people to feel good about them, also to get them to like me. Right? I was getting something back. I wasn't giving just to give, I was giving to get. And so that's always been part of my DNA. But now that I'm feeling good about myself and, talking about when you're on the airplane, they're like, if the oxygen mask comes down, you put yours on first and you put somebody else's on afterwards, right? Because you can't help anybody if you're really not taking care of yourself. So since I've gotten better, and really have healed from most of what happened, it's changed my attitude. It's changed my outlook. It's changed how I treat people. And and for me, I'm a behind the eight ball. You go to federal prison for a year, your credit gets hammered. I spent, I don't know, probably $80,000, $100,000 to try and minimize my prison stay as much as possible.
Wow.
I've lost millions of dollars. So part of what drives me is that I've got 4 kids. And I want to make sure they're taken care of, and I don't have a truckload left over, so I'm rebuilding that. But I know I can help people, and I know I can do something for people that a lot of other people can't do, and so I'm excited about it. And I just made a commitment. Last October, about a year ago, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, because people, you got to write a book. I'm like, I got, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna write a book. I did it originally because I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to, because, when you have an addiction, when you do things, you feel a lot of shame,
Yes.
I was sick of it. And the best way to take away your fear of something is to just lean into it. Right. So I'm taking away all the power from it.
Right.
I'm admitting to all of it. You were a food addict. Yep. You were a porn addict. Yep. You were sexually abused. Yep. You went to prison. Yep. Bad father. Yep. Bad husband. Yep. All of it. That's me. I did it all. Right. And that really, that's very freeing. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just, I'm gonna write a book. And I finally wrote the book, and it was very freeing. And then I had an opportunity to be on this show. People found out about me, and now people are reaching out to me, talking to me, asking me for help for themselves and people that they know. And so I think just by virtue of stepping up and being willing to help people authentically, earnestly, seriously, and just being committed to it and getting up every day, knowing that, my purpose is to make sure that, number one, I make sure my kids get to live a life that I didn't live. that I teach them how to love themselves from the young age, that I teach them how to choose a good partner, that I teach them how to use money properly, to teach them that it's okay to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what drives me, but also to leave a legacy of somebody who did not, who the end of the story was going to prison and then deciding he was going to kill himself because he had a bad relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that, and so as a result of that, I've been on podcasts, and, my book has been, well received, and people are calling me about it. And but I'm also working very hard to get in touch with people and get on their podcasts as well, and to try and spread my message. So, I'm on the phone, I have my coaching clients, I get referrals, I make sales calls, and I have coaching clients, different stuff still. So I'm doing lots of things myself to make sure that I grow my business as well. So same thing, it's still a lot of work, what I'm saying, but I'm not dying. I'm not going to be put in the grave, in a grave knowing that I didn't go down swinging.
Right. And so if somebody wants to pick up a copy of your book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, how do they do that?
Just go to Amazon and type in Tragic Hero and Wally Bressler. It'll pop up, and it gets delivered pretty quickly. There's a Kindle version of it. And as an aside, I really try to make myself available for people. If you go to my website, you can sign up for a free 15-minute meeting with me, and I will help you find out what the essence of your problem is, probably within those 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 5, occasionally it's 20, but I will help you understand what you're facing and why you're facing it, and recommend some strategies. Maybe I'm positive I can tell you what it is that's creating the problem for you, and I can even give you some strategies on how to deal with it. But at the end of the day, you've got to do the work.
In a quick nutshell, who would be your perfect client if I were to recommend someone to you, as far as the addiction sales-ish part?
Yeah, I work with salespeople and entrepreneurs all day long. It's not that I can't help people that aren't salespeople and entrepreneurs, because I do. But if you're in a position where you're not living the life that you want, and your addiction or your challenges, your self-sabotage are getting in the way of you creating the great business you want for yourself, for creating the great life for yourself, that you're not able to produce and care for your family or yourself the way you want to. As they said in Tombstone, I'm your Huckleberry.
And Wally, again, for someone that wants to sign up with you, what's your website?
You can reach me at triggersalesystem.com. That's triggersalesystem.com.
Wally, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Cool. Thank you so much. It was awesome to be here. I appreciate it again. I'm sorry it took me so long to sign up, but I'm so glad I came to talk with you, and thanks for your time.
And I'm going to close with one of my favorite quotes from Zig Ziglar, who says, "You are designed for accomplishment. You are engineered for success, and you are endowed with the seeds of greatness. Go forth and be great."
Join Powerful Eric's free Facebook group, Endeavor to Quit, and take control of your life. Learn more at powerfuleric.com.